In this video, we're going to look at how to use the cosine rule to calculate the length of a side in a triangle. In previous videos, we've looked at how to use the sine rule to calculate the length of a side or the size of an angle in a triangle, but in this video, we're going to look at using the cosine rule. Just like the sine rule, the cosine rule is a formula that is given to you on your formula list, and it looks a little bit like this here at the bottom. Okay, so if you can copy this down, and make sure that this is highlighted as being important, this guy here, and then we can proceed. We could go through the derivation, the proof of where this formula comes from, but I thought just for the sake of today's learning, I'll just give you it and then we'll just go ahead and use it. The main issue with these problems, I think the cosine rule is quite straightforward. The main issue is when you see a question is when do you use the sine rule versus when do you use the cosine rule. Today's work you're just always going to be using the cosine rule, but we'll have a look at an idea of like what the differences are between them. We've got one example we're going to work through, and it is here, example 1. So if you don't mind, if you could just pause the video and copy this down for me. Okay, so in this example, we want to calculate the value of x. So our formula, that's usually step 1, isn't it? We'll write down our formula. So our formula is, let's make that a bit bigger, a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a. Hopefully by now we've done quite enough examples of the sine rule that hopefully you'll be able to identify that, this is the capital, that's where the angle is. So this time it may be more helpful if we put a where the angle is. So we're going to call this bit angle A. B and C doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter at all. I'll call this bit B, call this bit C. It doesn't matter how you label it. But importantly, where the angle is, that's where I would usually put my capital A. And just as before, we're going to label the sides of the opposite the angle. So here, the angle 25, opposite angle 25. We'll call that side A. 23 is opposite angle B, so that's side B. 15 is opposite angle C, so we're going to call that C. Okay, so once we've got that, we can now just start substituting things into our formula. So instead of A, we've got x squared. That equals 23 squared plus 15 squared. Minus, and see this expression here. What I do when I do this, because sometimes you can get a wee error in your calculator if you don't do this. So this part here, I'm going to chuck this all inside a bracket. So I'm going to do 2 times 23 times 15 times cos of 25 degrees. Okay, so that full 2bc cos A goes inside a bracket. Okay, we can type the right hand side of our equation into our formula, or into our calculator, sorry. When we do that, if you do it properly, remember you just need to include your brackets. You should get 128.6476 269. Just please do check you get that on your calculator yourself. So that's what x squared is. We want to work out x, so we're going to need to take the square root. At this stage, instead of clearing your calculator, I would just do square root and then just press my ans button. So that's going to be 11.342 blah blah blah. And if we're doing it to one decimal place here, let's call that 11.3 centimetres. So these questions are actually quite repetitive, they're quite formulaic. The main thing is making sure that like where you're putting this here to make sure it ties in with your formula. Okay, so this was just one example of working through using the cosine rule. I want to show you why this is different from the sine rule. If we have a look at the sine rule, we would know to use the sine rule when we had matching pairs of information. What do I mean by that? Well, you know how we know this angle here? we also know the side opposite it. And similarly, this angle here, we want to work out the side opposite. So we've got like those two pieces of matching information where we've got one full bit of information and the half of the other information when we're looking at the angles on the opposite sides. So that's when we use the sine rule. But if we have a look at our example here, when we're using the cosine rule, notice here we don't have that match. Like, yes, this could be 1/2 of our unknown, but then we don't know this half here. So if you want, you could eliminate the sine rule to know to use the cosine rule. Personally, I don't. When I look at using the cosine rule, the first question I ask is the angle that I have sandwiched? So see this angle here of 25 degrees? And we're looking for the side opposite. The question I ask is the angle sandwiched? Do I know the length of both arms coming from the angle? So yes, I know 15 and yes, I know 23. Because I know both of those, I say that that angle's sandwiched. So therefore I go ahead and use the cosine rule. Okay, but that's going to be more helpful in later lessons when we're starting to identify what we're going to be using. Okay, so essentially label your triangle, write down your formula, substitute in your values, and then round to 1 decimal place. Once again, the formula is given to you in your exam formula list. Okay, thank you very much.